Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The rain didn't just fall that night. It attacked. Sheets of water hammered the windshield of the battered Honda Accord like the sky itself wanted to crack it open and swallow everything inside. Marlo Ashby gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles had gone white an hour ago, her eyes straining against the darkness and the relentless assault of water. Beside her, 15-year-old Poet sat curled against the passenger door, earbuds in, pretending to sleep. But Marlo knew better. She could see the tension in her daughter's shoulders, the way her fingers clutched the edge of her hoodie like it was the only solid thing left in the world. They'd been driving for 11 hours straight. 11 hours since Marlo had thrown 2 duffel bags into the trunk, grabbed Poet from her bedroom, and said the words she'd been rehearsing for months. "We're leaving, now, no questions." Poet hadn't asked any. She'd seen the bruises before, she'd heard the fights. She knew what her father was capable of when he didn't get his way. Grant Ashby wasn't the kind of man who let things go. He was the kind who made calls, who had friends in low places, who knew how to find people who didn't want to be found. Marlo had worked for him once, back when she was naive enough to think his charm was real and his temper was just passion. She'd been a financial analyst at his investment firm, sharp with numbers, sharper with patterns. She'd caught irregularities in the books, things that didn't add up, and instead of reporting them, she'd fallen for the man doing the stealing. That was 12 years ago. Now she was 38, running through a Pacific Northwest storm with her daughter and everything they owned in 2 bags. The Accord was 23 years old, bought cash from a stranger off Craigslist 6 months ago in preparation for this exact moment. No GPS, no OnStar, no way for Grant to track them except the burner phone in her pocket, which she'd only used twice and planned to destroy before sunrise. The mountain road twisted like a snake with a broken spine. Marlo had taken it on purpose, avoiding the interstate, avoiding cameras, avoiding anywhere Grant's people might think to look. The GPS she'd downloaded offline before they left showed this road cutting through the Cascade Mountains, eventually connecting to a coastal highway that would take them to a town small enough to disappear into. But the storm had other plans. The first sign of trouble was the grinding sound from under the hood. Marlo's stomach dropped. She knew cars. She'd learned from her grandfather, a mechanic who'd taught her that understanding engines was understanding control. She recognized the sound immediately. The timing belt. Of course. Of all the things that could fail, it had to be the one thing that would strand them here, now, in the middle of nowhere. Poet pulled out one earbud. "Mom," Marlo kept her voice steady. "We're okay, just need to pull over for a minute." The grinding got louder. She scanned the darkness ahead, looking for anything. A gas station. A ranger station. Hell, even a wide shoulder where she could try to fix it in the rain. But there was nothing. Just trees, cliffs, and darkness so complete it felt like driving through ink. Then, through a gap in the trees, she saw it. Lights. Not streetlights or headlights, but the subtle glow of windows reflecting against wet stone. A structure. Big. Built into the hillside about 200 yards off the road. Marlo made a split-second decision and yanked the wheel. The Accord shuddered as she guided it onto what looked like it might have once been a driveway. Branches scraped the sides of the car. The suspension protested over rocks and ruts, and then the engine died completely. They coasted to a stop about 50 yards from the structure. Marlo killed the headlights and sat in the sudden darkness, listening to the rain hammer the roof and her own heart hammer her ribs. Poet sat up straight. "Where are we?" Marlo squinted through the windshield. Through the rain and darkness, she could make out the shape of the building. It was massive, modernist architecture, concrete and glass, built in levels that seemed to grow out of the hillside itself like something organic and impossible. And it was dark, no lights in the windows now. What she'd seen must have been reflection from their headlights. "I don't know," Marlowe said. "But we need shelter." She grabbed the flashlight from the glove box, tested it. The beam was weak but functional. "Stay here," she told Poet. Poet shook her head. "No way. I'm not sitting in a dead car in the middle of nowhere while you go into some creepy mansion alone." "Fine, but stay close." They stepped out into the storm. The rain was even worse than it sounded from inside the car. It soaked through Marlowe's jacket in seconds, plastered her dark hair to her skull, ran into her eyes. Poet pulled her hood up, but it was useless. They were drenched before they'd taken 10 steps. The driveway, if it could even be called that anymore, was overgrown with weeds and saplings. Whatever this place was, no one had been here in years. Marlowe's flashlight beams swept across the facade as they approached. The architecture was stunning. Brutal concrete balanced with floor-to-ceiling windows, cantilevered terraces, a design that probably cost millions. The kind of house that ended up in Architectural Digest. The kind of house that didn't just sit abandoned. They reached what looked like the main entrance. Massive wooden doors, weathered but still solid. Marlowe tried the handle. Locked. Of course. She handed the flashlight to Poet and pulled a credit card from her wallet, an old trick her grandfather had taught her. "People think you need fancy tools to pick a lock, kiddo. Sometimes all you need is patience and plastic." It took her 2 minutes. The lock was old, expensive, but not designed to keep out someone desperate. The door swung open with a groan that sounded almost alive. They stepped inside and Marlowe pulled the door shut behind them, cutting off the sound of the rain. The silence that followed was profound. Poet swept the flashlight around. They were standing in a massive foyer. The beam caught polished concrete floors, a floating staircase that seemed to hang in mid-air, and furniture covered in white sheets that glowed ghostly in the darkness. Everything was covered in a layer of dust, but underneath, Marlowe could see the quality. This wasn't just wealth. This was taste. "Hello?" Marlowe called out. Her voice echoed through the empty space. "Anyone here?" No response. Just the sound of rain against glass and their own breathing. They moved deeper into the house. Poet's flashlight revealed a sunken living room with a fireplace you could stand in, floor-to-ceiling windows that during daylight probably offered views of the mountains, and artwork on the walls. Real artwork. Marlowe recognized a Kandinsky, or at least something that looked enough like a Kandinsky to be worth more than she'd made in 5 years. "This is insane," Poet whispered. "Who just leaves a place like this?" Marlowe shook her head. She was wondering the same thing. They moved through the ground floor, Marlowe's wet shoes squeaking on the polished concrete. The kitchen was commercial grade. Sub-zero refrigerator, Viking range, marble countertops. Everything was spotless under the dust, like someone had cleaned obsessively and then just walked away. On the kitchen counter, Marlowe found a stack of mail. She picked up the top envelope. The address label read Castellane Family, followed by this address. The postmark was from 7 years ago. Poet had moved to the windows, looking out at the storm. "Mum, you need to see this." Marlowe joined her. The windows overlooked a terraced hillside that dropped away into darkness. But what made her breath catch was what she could see closer to the house. An infinity pool, drained but intact. A sculpture garden with pieces that looked like they belonged in a museum. And beyond that, through the rain, the faint lights of what might have been a town miles away in the valley below. "This is like something out of a movie," Poet said. "The kind where the family gets murdered in the first act." But Poet was right. Something was wrong here. Houses like this didn't just sit empty. Someone owned it. Someone paid the property taxes. Someone had a reason for letting it rot. They explored the second floor. Bedrooms, 5 of them, each with its own bathroom, each decorated with the kind of attention to detail that spoke of money and time. In the master bedroom, Marlowe found family photos on the dresser. A couple, mid-40s maybe, beautiful in that effortless way wealthy people managed to be. And children, 3 of them. 2 boys who looked like twins, maybe 10 years old. and a teenage girl, maybe Poet's age, with dark hair and darker eyes. Marlowe nodded. They did, which made the abandonment even stranger. Poet moved toward it. "Don't touch anything," Marlowe said. "We're just here until the storm passes. Then we're gone." But even as she said it, she knew she was lying to herself. Her analytical mind was already working, already putting pieces together. The mail was 7 years old. The family had vanished 7 years ago. This level of wealth didn't disappear quietly. There would have been news, investigations, something. They found blankets in a hallway closet, still sealed in plastic like someone had bought them and never used them. Marlowe's hands were shaking as she tore open the package. From cold, she told herself. Just from the cold. They made a nest in the living room, away from the windows, using the furniture as windbreaks against the drafts. Marlowe tried her burner phone. No signal. Of course not. They were in the mountains, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a storm. She turned it off to save battery. Poet had wrapped herself in 2 blankets and was staring at the ceiling. "You think Dad's looking for us?" Marlowe's jaw tightened. "Yes. Will he find us?" Marlowe wanted to lie, wanted to promise that they were safe, that Grant would never touch them again, that this midnight escape would be the end of 12 years of fear. But she'd promised herself when Poet was born that she'd never lie to her daughter about the important things. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he doesn't." Poet was quiet for a moment. "Then, I'm glad we left." Marlowe felt her throat tighten. She reached over and squeezed Poet's hand. "Me too, baby." They tried to sleep. But Marlowe's mind wouldn't shut off. She kept thinking about the family in the photos, about the mail from 7 years ago, about the house that sat perfect and empty like a museum to a life that had stopped mid-sentence. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up. She grabbed the flashlight and started exploring again, careful not to wake Poet. She went back to the teenage girl's room. Something about it pulled at her. She examined the corkboard more closely. The newspaper clippings weren't random. They were all about one company, Vertex Capital Group, a venture capital firm based in Seattle. The articles spanned several years, chronicling the firm's rise, its billion-dollar deals, its founders' growing influence. And then, tucked in the corner, a single article with a different tone. Vertex Capital under investigation for fraud. Potential Ponzi scheme. Investors demand audit. The date on that article was 7 years and 3 months ago. Marlowe's heart started to race. She knew this pattern. She'd worked in finance. She'd seen what happened when the facade cracked on these things. People disappeared. Not always literally, but money had a way of making people vanish when things went wrong. Marlowe opened it carefully. The first page had a date, 7 years and 4 months ago, and below that, in careful handwriting, "If you're reading this, you either broke into our house or something has happened to us. Either way, you deserve to know the truth." Marlowe's hands trembled as she turned the page. The journal was a log, dates, names, transactions. But more than that, it was a confession, or not a confession, a testimony. The writer, who Marlowe assumed was the teenage girl from the photos, laid out a story. Her parents had been investors with Vertex Capital. They'd made money, a lot of money. But then her mother, who had a background in forensic accounting, had noticed something. The returns were too consistent, the investments too perfect. The kind of numbers that only happened when someone was cooking the books. They'd started digging. Quietly at first, then more aggressively. They'd pulled their money out, and when Vertex threatened them, when the founder, a man named Dorian Vex, had shown up at their house with lawyers and threats, they'd decided to gather evidence instead of backing down. Marlowe flipped through the pages. The journal detailed months of work, hacked emails, recorded phone calls, copied financial statements. The Castellane family had built a case, a real case, the kind that could bring down a billionaire, and then the entries stopped. The last one was dated 7 years ago exactly. We're taking everything to the FBI tomorrow. If this works, Vex goes to prison and 5,000 investors get their money back. If it doesn't, well, we have a backup plan. Evidence secured. Location secure. If they come for us, the truth survives. Marlowe closed the journal slowly. She looked around the room with new eyes. This wasn't just a house. It was a safe house. These people had known they were in danger. They'd prepared. And then they'd vanished. She should have left it alone. Should have woken Poet, grabbed their bags, and walked the 11 miles to the nearest town in the rain if she had to. This wasn't her fight. She had enough problems. But something in that journal reminded her of herself, of the moment she'd discovered Grant was embezzling from his own clients, of the choice she'd made to stay quiet because she was pregnant and scared, of the 12 years she'd spent watching him hurt people while she told herself it wasn't her business. She thought about the girl who'd written this journal, about how brave she must have been, about what might have happened to her. Marlowe stood and walked back to the living room. Poet was sitting up, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Couldn't sleep either?" Poet asked. Marlowe shook her head. "Come with me. I want to show you something." They went back to the bedroom. Marlowe handed Poet the journal. "Read." "I don't know, but I think we should find out." "Why? We're running from our own problems. Why take on someone else's?" Poet was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the closet. "This is where you said you found the blankets?" "Yeah. Why?" Poet stepped into the closet. It was a walk-in, bigger than the bedroom Marlowe had growing up. She started pushing aside hanging clothes, tapping on the walls. "What are you doing?" Marlowe asked. "In movies," Poet said, "when people hide evidence in a safe house, they don't just leave it in a journal. They hide it somewhere better. This isn't a movie." Poet ignored her. She kept tapping, kept moving along the wall, and then she stopped. Her hand pressed against something. "Mom, this sounds different." Marlowe joined her. Poet was right. The back wall of the closet had a hollow sound. Marlowe ran her fingers along the edge, felt a seam, barely visible, perfectly cut. She pressed. Nothing happened. She tried sliding the panel. Nothing. Then Poet reached up and pushed against a specific spot near the top corner. Something clicked. The panel swung inward an inch with a soft pneumatic hiss. They looked at each other. Marlowe's heart was pounding. Every instinct she had screamed at her to close it, to walk away, to get Poet somewhere safe. But her hands were already pulling the panel open. Behind it was darkness and a soft blue glow. LED lights, still powered somehow, and beyond that stairs, going down into the hillside. What happens next will turn this night upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Marlowe grabbed the flashlight. Her mouth was dry. She looked at Poet. "We should leave," she said. "Right now. We should get out of this house and never come back." Poet looked at the stairs, then at her mother. "But we're not going to, are we?" Marlowe took a breath, then another. Thought about the family and the photos. Thought about the girl who'd written that journal. Thought about 5,000 people who'd lost their money to a con man. Thought about herself, running at 38 years old with nothing but 2 duffel bags and a daughter who deserved better. "No," she said, "we're not." They started down the stairs. The LED lights were motion-activated, flickering to life as they descended. The staircase was carved into the rock of the hillside itself. Smooth concrete walls, cool air, the smell of earth and something else, something metallic. 23 steps down. Marlowe counted each one. At the bottom, they found themselves in a hallway, short, maybe 15 feet long, and at the end, a door, steel, serious, with a biometric scanner mounted beside it. Poet touched the scanner. It lit up, still active, fingerprint required, or retinal scan, or facial recognition, top-of-the-line security, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. Marlowe examined it carefully. Her mind was already working through the problem. She'd bypassed security systems before. Grant's office had one. She'd learned to crack it 6 years ago when she'd needed proof of his affairs for the divorce lawyer she'd never ended up calling. But this was different. This was military grade. The kind of thing that didn't get bypassed without serious equipment or serious expertise. Poet walked around the small space. The walls were bare except for one small panel near the floor. She knelt down and pried it open with her fingernails. Inside was a mess of wires, power supply, backup battery, and something else, a manual override, protected by a simple combination lock. Marlowe knelt beside her. The combination lock was 4 digits. Could be anything. Birth date, anniversary, lucky numbers. She pulled out the journal she'd brought with her and flipped through it. There, in one of the early entries, the girl had written about her little brother's birthday. Twins born on March 13th. Her mother had made a joke about it being bad luck. She'd written it down. 0313. Marlowe tried it. The lock clicked open. Behind it was a simple switch. Marlowe looked at Poet. Her daughter nodded. She flipped the switch. Somewhere deep in the walls, motors engaged. Hydraulics hissed, and the steel door began to swing open. What lay beyond it made Marlowe's breath stop in her chest. The room was approximately 30 feet by 40 feet, carved into the hillside, temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled, lit by the same blue LED lights that lined the stairs, and filled with things that didn't belong in an abandoned house. The left wall was lined with filing cabinets, industrial strength, fireproof, each one labeled Vertex Capital, Evidence, Chronological. The right wall had a desk, 3 computer monitors, a server rack, all dark but clearly maintained, and next to them, a wall safe, door hanging open, empty. But it was the center of the room that made Marlowe's hands shake. A table, long, steel, and on it, organized with obsessive precision, rows of items, hundreds of USB drives, external hard drives, file folders thick as phone books, and at the center, something that made no sense at all. Currency, stacks of it. But not just dollars. Euros, yen, pounds, all vacuum sealed, and next to the currency, small velvet bags. Marlowe opened one. Diamonds, uncut. At least a dozen of them. "What the hell is this?" Poet whispered. She pulled out a file at random, opened it, saw numbers that made her stomach drop. This single account showed transfers totaling $18 million, and it was marked with a single word in red ink. Stolen. She pulled out another file. 32 million. Stolen. Another 7 million stolen. "Mom," she said, "these are still working." Marlowe joined her as the monitors flickered on. No password screen. Whoever had set this up had left it accessible. Like they'd expected someone to find it. Like they'd wanted someone to find it. Marlowe clicked it. It was a video, security camera footage, timestamped from 8 years ago, showing an office, expensive, and in it a man Marlowe recognized from the newspaper clippings, Dorian Vex, founder and CEO of Vertex Capital Group, talking to someone off camera. Poet turned up the volume. Vex's voice came through crystal clear. "I don't care what the audit shows, we bury it, pay off the auditors, threaten them if we have to. The investors don't need to know we lost their money. We just need 6 more months to recoup with the Dubai deal," the voice off camera responded. "And if the Dubai deal falls through?" Vex smiled, a cold smile. "Then we take the remaining capital and disappear. 500 million should be enough to start over somewhere without extradition." The video ended. Marlowe and Poet looked at each other. "There are 347 files in here," Poet said quietly, checking the folder. "If they're all like this." She didn't need to finish. Marlowe understood. The Castellane family hadn't just gathered evidence. They'd built an airtight case. Everything needed to prove that Dorian Vex had run a Ponzi scheme, that he'd stolen from 5,000 investors, that he'd committed fraud on a scale that would make Bernie Madoff look like a small-time grifter. And they'd hidden it here, in this vault, in this house, waiting. Poet had moved back to the table. She was looking at the currency and diamonds. "Mum, how much do you think this is worth?" Marlowe joined her, started doing rough math in her head. The currency alone, if it was real, had to be at least 15 million. Maybe 20. The diamonds were harder to estimate, but if they were high quality, another 10 million, minimum. And that didn't account for what might be in the evidence itself, the kind of leverage this represented, the kind of value it might have to the right people. Then Poet opened a drawer in the steel table and pulled out a document. It was an inventory, typed, official-looking, listing everything in the vault. Total asset value, $330 million. The number sat there on the page like it wasn't real, like it was a typo. But beneath it was a breakdown. Cryptocurrency access codes, 75 million, rare coins, 40 million, diamonds and precious stones, 60 million, currency, 25 million, gold bars stored off-site, access codes included, 90 million, evidence leverage value estimated, 20 million. At the bottom of the page, a note, handwritten, the same handwriting from the journal. "If you found this, we're either dead or in hiding. This is everything Vex stole. We recovered it over 18 months, hacked his accounts, intercepted his transfers, became the ghosts in his machine. We were going to return it to the investors and send him to prison. But if you're reading this, we didn't make it. The choice is yours. Keep it, use it, or finish what we started. The password to access the cryptocurrency is our daughter's birthday. Trust no one, but trust yourself." Marlowe sank into a chair. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. $330 million, sitting in a vault beneath an abandoned mansion, and evidence that could destroy one of the most powerful men on the West Coast. Poet sat down next to her. "What do we do?" Marlowe didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Her mind was spinning through possibilities, implications, dangers. They could take the money and run, disappear so completely Grant would never find them. Poet could go to any college she wanted. They could live anywhere, be anyone. Or they could do what the Castellanes had tried to do, expose Vex, return the money, finish the fight. But that meant risk, real risk, the kind that had made an entire family vanish. She looked at her daughter, at this fierce, brave 15-year-old who'd walked away from her entire life without hesitation because her mother asked her to, who'd climbed down into an unknown vault without fear, who'd spent her whole life watching her mother make the safe choice, the scared choice. "What do you think we should do?" Marlowe asked. Poet looked around the vault, at the evidence, at the money, at the choice laid out in front of them. "I think," she said slowly, "that we didn't find this by accident. I think maybe we were meant to finish what they started." Marlowe felt something shift in her chest, something that had been locked tight for 12 years. She thought about the girl who'd written that journal, about the family who'd risked everything for truth, about the 5,000 people who'd lost their savings to a con man. And she thought about Poet, about the woman her daughter was becoming, about the lesson she was teaching by example. She stood up, walked to the computers, started copying files onto the USB drives she found in the desk drawer. "What are you doing?" Poet asked. "Finishing what they started," Marlowe said. "But first, we need insurance, copies of everything, hidden in different places, because if we're going to fight, we're going to fight smart." They spent the next 2 hours copying every file, every video, every document. They documented the currency, photographed the diamonds, catalogued everything. Marlowe's financial training kicked in. She worked methodically, precisely, building a case the way she used to build audits. They couldn't stay here. The house would draw attention eventually. And if they were going to expose Vex, they needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't reach them. But more than that, they needed allies, people who could verify the evidence. Journalists, maybe lawyers, maybe law enforcement if they could find someone not on Vex's payroll. She looked at Poet, curled up in a chair, finally sleeping despite everything. And she made a decision. They wouldn't run anymore, not from Grant, not from Vex, not from the truth. They would fight, and they would win. The first rays of sunlight crept through the mansion's floor-to-ceiling windows like they were afraid of what they might find. Marlowe stood at the living room window, watching the storm clouds break apart over the valley below. The rain had stopped sometime around 5 in the morning, leaving everything washed clean and impossibly green. From this height, she could see the town she'd spotted the night before. A small cluster of buildings tucked into the valley, smoke rising from chimneys, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed immediately. Behind her, Poet stirred on the couch, wrapped in the blankets they'd found. Marlowe turned and watched her daughter wake up slowly, the way teenagers do, fighting consciousness like it was an enemy. For a moment, just a brief moment, Marlowe let herself pretend this was normal. A mother and daughter on vacation, staying in a beautiful house, nothing chasing them, no secrets buried beneath their feet. "Did last night really happen?" Poet asked, her voice rough with sleep. Marlowe nodded. "Every bit of it." Poet sat up, pushing hair out of her face. "So we're sitting on $330 million and evidence that could destroy a billionaire." Marlowe moved to the couch and sat down next to her daughter. "That's about the size of it. What time is it?" Marlowe checked her burner phone. 6:43. "We should eat something. Then we need to make decisions." They found the kitchen better stocked than expected. The refrigerator was dead, obviously, but the pantry held canned goods, dried pasta, rice, things with long shelf lives. Marlowe wondered if the Castellane family had stocked it deliberately, or if this was just how wealthy people lived, always prepared. She made a cold breakfast from granola bars and canned peaches. They ate in silence, both of them processing what they'd discovered. Marlowe's mind was already 3 steps ahead, running scenarios, calculating risks. It's what she did, what she'd always done. See the patterns, predict the outcomes, stay ahead of the chaos. "We need to understand exactly what we have," Marlowe said finally. The inventory said cryptocurrency worth $75 million. But cryptocurrency isn't like cash, it's volatile. What was worth $75 million 7 years ago might be worth nothing now, or it might be worth twice that. "Doesn't matter right now," Marlowe said. "What matters is the access codes. If we have those, we have control. Same with the gold. 90 million stored off-site. That means there's a location, a key, something." "And the evidence," Poet added. "That's worth something too, right? I mean, not money, but like justice." Marlowe smiled despite everything. "Yeah, baby. Justice is worth something." They spent the morning going through the vault more systematically. Marlowe brought up a notebook from the Honda and started documenting everything. She'd learned early in her finance career that details mattered. Numbers told stories if you knew how to read them. The filing cabinets were organized by investor. Each file contained the same information: original investment amount, promised returns, actual returns, and where the money had really gone. Marlowe pulled out file after file, reading stories of retirement savings wiped out, college funds stolen, small business owners bankrupted. One file belonged to a woman named Patricia Enfield. She'd invested her entire inheritance, $2.3 million. Vertex had promised her 12% annual returns. For 3 years, she'd received exactly that. Then the money vanished. According to the notes in the file, she'd died 6 months later. Heart attack. Her family blamed the stress. Marlowe felt rage building in her chest. This wasn't just fraud, it was murder. Slow, bureaucratic, laundered through financial instruments, but murder nonetheless. Poet had found something else. A leather portfolio tucked behind the server rack. Inside were photographs. The Castellane family in happier times. The parents, David and Eleanor. The twin boys, Marcus and Julian. and the teenage daughter. Marlowe found her name written on the back of one photo. Sable. Sable Castellane. 17 years old when the photo was taken. Dark hair, fierce eyes. The girl who'd written the journal, who'd helped her parents build this case, who'd hidden evidence worth hundreds of millions of dollars and then vanished. There was another photo. This one showed the whole family at what looked like a tech conference. They were standing next to a man Marlowe recognized, Dorian Vex. He had his arm around David Castellane's shoulders. Both men were smiling, the kind of smile that comes easy when money's flowing. Marlowe turned the photo over. Written on the back in faded ink was a date, 8 years ago. And below that, a single word. Before. Before they knew, before they discovered the truth, before everything fell apart. She showed the photo to Poet. Look at them. They trusted him. That's how people like him work, Marlowe said. They don't look like monsters. They look like success, like someone you want to be. She thought about Grant, how charming he'd been when they first met, how everyone at the firm had loved him, how she'd felt special being chosen by him. Right up until the first time he'd grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises and told her she was lucky he put up with her. The computers in the vault were still running. Marlowe sat down at the main terminal and started exploring. The desktop was organized like a command center. Folders for different types of evidence. Video surveillance, audio recordings, financial documents, email correspondence, wire transfer records. She opened the video folder first. There were hundreds of files, each one labeled with a date and location. She clicked on one at random. It showed Dorian Vex in what looked like his home office. He was on the phone. The timestamp said it was from 7 years and 2 months ago. Marlowe turned up the volume. Vex's voice was calm, almost bored. I understand your concern, Gerald, but the audit is already handled. We have people in place. They'll find exactly what we want them to find. A pause while the other person spoke. Then Vex laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Gerald, you're not thinking clearly. We're not just moving money. We're moving perception. As long as investors believe they're making returns, they are making returns. It's all psychological. Another pause. And if they stop believing? Vex's voice hardened. Then we make them believe again, or we make them disappear. Do you understand me? The video ended. Marlowe felt sick. She'd worked in finance long enough to know fraud happened. But this was different. This was casual, deliberate, evil dressed up in business casual. Poet had come to stand behind her. How many videos like that are there? Jesus. Marlowe opened another one. This time it was footage from what looked like a restaurant. High-end, dim lighting. Vex was sitting across from someone Marlowe didn't recognize. A woman, blonde, expensive jewelry. The audio was harder to hear, but Marlowe caught enough. The woman was asking about her investment, $5 million. She wanted to withdraw it. Vex was explaining why that wasn't possible right now. Market volatility, temporary holds, technical issues. All lies delivered with a smile. The woman wasn't buying it. She stood up, told Vex she wanted her money by the end of the week or she was going to the SEC. Vex's smile never wavered. But Marlowe saw his hand move to his phone under the table, saw him type something, and then, barely audible, she heard him say into his Bluetooth earpiece, "We have a problem. Patricia Enfield. Handle it." Marlowe's blood ran cold. She grabbed the file she'd looked at earlier. Patricia Enfield, dead 6 months after demanding her money back. She showed Poet the connection. Poet's face went pale. "Mom," she whispered, "he killed her." "We don't know that for sure," Marlowe said. But even as she spoke, she knew it was true. The timeline was too perfect, the threat too clear. They spent the next 3 hours going through files, building timelines, connecting dots. Marlowe's analytical brain was in overdrive. She saw patterns, saw how Vex had systematically stolen from investors, used new investments to pay old returns, classic Ponzi scheme structure. But she also saw something darker, saw how he'd threatened people, made them disappear, used his wealth and connections to bury evidence. And the Castellane family had caught all of it. Around noon, Marlowe's stomach growled. They'd been so focused they'd forgotten to eat. She went upstairs to raid the pantry again. While she was there, she heard a sound that made her freeze. An engine, distant, but getting closer. She ran to the window. A vehicle was coming up the overgrown driveway, a black SUV, expensive, tinted windows. Her first thought was Grant. He'd found them somehow, tracked the burner phone before she'd turned it off. Or maybe he'd just gotten lucky, covered enough ground looking for her that he'd stumbled on the right remote road. Her second thought was worse. What if it wasn't Grant? What if it was someone connected to Vex? Someone who knew about this house, who'd been watching it, waiting for someone to show up. She ran back downstairs. Poet was still in the vault. "Someone's here," Marlowe said, trying to keep her voice calm. "We need to hide. Now." Poet's eyes went wide. She started gathering the files they'd been reviewing. "Leave them," Marlowe said. "Just move." They heard car doors slam. Voices. Male. At least 2 people. Marlowe's mind raced. The front door was locked. They'd relatched it after entering, but the lock was old. She'd picked it in under 2 minutes. Anyone with basic skills could do the same. "The vault," Poet said. "We can hide in the vault." "No," Marlowe shook her head. "If they know about the vault, we're trapped. We need options." She grabbed Poet's hand and pulled her toward the back of the house. There was a door she'd noticed during their initial exploration. It led to the terraced hillside, to the gardens and the pool, and beyond that, the forest. They made it to the door just as they heard the front lock click open. Voices echoed through the house. Not Grant's voice. Marlowe didn't recognize them. Quiet footsteps. Professional. People who knew how to move through a space. Searching. Marlowe and Poet slipped outside. The morning sun was bright after the dim interior. Marlowe pulled the door closed behind them carefully. No sound. They moved quickly down the stone steps to the first terrace. The drained pool stretched before them like a concrete crater. Beyond it, the sculpture garden. Beyond that, trees. But before they could run, a voice stopped them. Marlowe Ashby. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Someone who knew her name. Marlowe turned slowly. A man was standing on the upper terrace, mid-50s, grey hair, suit that looked expensive even from a distance. And next to him, a younger man, 30s, athletic build, the kind of casual readiness that suggested security training. The older man held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Please don't run. We're not here to hurt you." Marlowe positioned herself between the men and Poet. "Who are you?" "My name is Quinlan Rowe," the older man said. "I'm a private investigator. I've been looking for this house for 5 years. What happens next will turn this night upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Marlowe's hand found Poet's and squeezed. "How do you know my name?" Quinlan stepped down onto the terrace slowly, non-threatening. "Your car is parked out front. Honda Accord registered to a shell company. But I've been doing this a long time. It took me about 20 minutes to trace it back to you. Former financial analyst. Worked for Ashby Investments until 12 years ago. Married to Grant Ashby until, well, technically you're still married. But you filed a restraining order 6 months ago that was denied." Marlowe felt exposed, vulnerable. This man knew things she'd tried to keep private. "What do you want?" she asked. "The same thing you want," Quinlan said. "To finish what the Castellane family started." "How do you know what I want?" "Because you're still here." Quinlan gestured to the house. "You could have grabbed whatever you found and run, but you didn't. You stayed. You looked through the evidence. I'm guessing you're trying to figure out what to do with it. Marlowe said nothing, calculating, trying to determine if this was a trap. The younger man spoke for the first time. We're not working for Vex, if that's what you're thinking. Quinlan nodded. This is Garrett, my associate. We represent a group of investors who were defrauded by Vertex Capital. They've spent 7 years trying to get their money back, trying to find evidence, trying to find the Castellane family. Why? Poet spoke up. What happened to them? Quinlan's expression darkened. That's the question everyone's been asking. 7 years ago, the Castellane family was building a case against Dorian Vex. David Castellane was a successful tech investor. His wife Eleanor was a forensic accountant. They'd made money with Vertex, then started noticing irregularities. They pulled their investment, $17 million, and Vex couldn't pay it back. So they started digging, Marlowe said. Quinlan nodded. And they found everything. Evidence of a Ponzi scheme that had been running for 12 years. 5,000 investors. $1.2 billion stolen. They gathered documentation, recorded conversations, hacked into Vex's personal accounts. They built an airtight case. And then? Poet asked. And then they vanished. Quinlan's voice was heavy. The night before they were supposed to meet with federal prosecutors, the entire family disappeared. David, Eleanor, the twin boys, and their daughter Sable. No bodies were ever found, no trace. It's like they evaporated. Marlowe's mind was racing. But you don't think they're dead? Quinlan smiled slightly. Smart. No, I don't think they're dead. I think they ran. I think they realized how dangerous Vex was, and they went into hiding. But here's the thing. Without the evidence they'd gathered, the case fell apart. Vex's lawyers buried everything, paid off the right people, made it go away, and 5,000 investors got nothing. So you've been looking for the evidence, Marlowe said. For 5 years, Quinlan confirmed. I'm former FBI, specialized in financial crimes. When the case collapsed, I couldn't let it go. I started investigating on my own. Eventually, I found families willing to pool resources to hire me. They want their money back. They want justice. And you think the evidence is here? I know it is. Quinlan pulled out a tablet and showed her a satellite image of the mansion. This house was purchased by David Castellane 8 years ago through a shell company. It's registered to a trust that can't be traced, but I've found architectural plans. This place has a vault, built into the hillside, temperature-controlled, powered by independent solar panels and backup batteries. The kind of place you build when you need to hide something for a very long time. Marlowe looked at Poet. They'd found it, found the vault, found the evidence, and now someone else knew. Have you been inside? Marlowe asked. No, Quinlan said. We just arrived. We've been triangulating the location for months. This road, this area. But there are a dozen abandoned properties out here. We were checking them systematically. Saw your car. Decided to investigate. Garrett stepped forward. Look, I understand you're scared. You're running from an abusive husband. You stumbled into something you weren't looking for. But you have to understand what's at stake here. There are families who lost everything. Retirement's gone. Kids who couldn't go to college. People who had to sell their homes. And Dorian Vex is still out there. Still rich. Still untouchable. Marlowe felt the weight of it. She'd read the files, seen the names, the amounts, the lives destroyed. She knew what it felt like to be trapped by someone powerful, to feel helpless. But she also knew what it felt like to trust the wrong people. How do I know you're telling the truth? She asked. How do I know you're not working for Vex? Sent here to destroy the evidence? Quinlan reached into his jacket. Both Marlowe and Garrett tensed. But he pulled out a business card and a folder. My credentials, he said, handing her the card. Former FBI, licensed private investigator. And in this folder, letters from 17 families who hired me, references, contact information. You can verify everything. Marlowe took the folder but didn't open it. And if I tell you I haven't found anything, that there's nothing here? Then I'll apologize for wasting your time and leave, Quinlan said. But we both know that's not true. Because you've been inside that vault, you've seen what's there, and now you're trying to figure out what to do about it. How do you know I've been in the vault? Garrett pointed. You left the hidden panel in the bedroom closet open, and there are fresh footprints in the dust on the stairs. Marlowe cursed herself silently. Sloppy. She'd been so focused on the discovery that she'd forgotten to cover her tracks. Poet tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mom, I think we should hear them out. Marlowe looked at her daughter, saw the same fierce determination she'd seen in the photos of Sable Castellane. These were the moments that defined you, the choices you made when everything was on the line. Inside, Marlowe said. We talk inside. They went back into the mansion. Marlowe led them to the living room, but not to the vault. Not yet. They sat on the sheet-covered furniture, dust rising around them like ghosts. Quinlan opened his tablet and showed them files. Case documentation, investor testimonies, financial records that showed the scope of Vex's fraud. He'd been thorough, professional. Exactly what you'd expect from a former FBI agent. The scheme ran for 14 years, Quinlan explained. Vex started Vertex Capital in 2003. Early investments were legitimate. He made money, built a reputation. Then around 2008, during the financial crisis, he started taking risks, bad risks, lost everything. But instead of admitting it, he doubled down. Started using new investor money to pay returns to old investors. Classic Ponzi, Marlowe said. Exactly. And he was good at it. Charismatic. Connected. He recruited high-profile investors, celebrities, tech executives, politicians, people who gave him credibility, and he kept the returns consistent but not too high, 8 to 12% annually. Believable? Until the Castellanes figured it out, Garrett added. Quinlan nodded. David Castellane was smart. He started seeing patterns, returns that were too consistent, Vex's reluctance to allow audits. And when David tried to pull his money out, Vex stalled. That's when Eleanor got involved. She had the skills to dig deep, and what she found was damning. He showed them more files, email chains where Vex instructed employees to falsify records, recorded phone calls where he threatened investors, bank records showing money being moved through dozens of shell companies to hide the theft. This is all evidence you've gathered? Marlowe asked. Yes, but it's not enough. Quinlan's frustration was evident. It's all circumstantial, secondary. What we need is the primary evidence. The recordings the Castellanes made, the original financial documents they copied, the cryptocurrency wallets they seized. That's what will put Vex in prison. And you think it's all in the vault? Marlowe said. Quinlan met her eyes. I know it is. The question is whether you're going to let us see it. Marlowe was quiet for a long moment. Poet was watching her, waiting, trusting her to make the right call. Why should I? Marlowe finally asked. What's in it for me? For my daughter? We give you the evidence. You go after Vex, and then what? He comes after us. We spent the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders? Quinlan leaned forward. If we do this right, Vex goes to prison. He can't come after you from a cell. And if we don't do it right, then yeah, Quinlan admitted. You're in danger. But you're already in danger. You found this place. You saw what's down there. Do you really think you can just walk away and pretend it never happened? Marlowe knew he was right. The moment she'd opened that vault, she'd crossed a line. There was no going back to her old life. No matter what she did now, everything had changed. How would it work? She asked. Hypothetically. Garrett pulled out a laptop. We document everything, photograph it, copy all digital files. Then we approach the FBI through back channels. People I know who aren't compromised. We give them everything. They build a case, arrest Vex before he knows what's happening. And the money? Poet asked. The 330 million? Quinlan's eyes widened slightly. So it's true. The inventory we found referenced in old emails. It's all there? Marlowe didn't confirm or deny, just waited. The money gets returned to the investors, Quinlan said. It's not ours to keep. It belongs to the people Vex stole it from. All of it? Marlowe pressed. Because I'm looking at a situation where my daughter and I are homeless, running from a dangerous man, with no resources. And you're asking me to hand over a fortune that could change our lives. Quinlan was quiet. Then he said something Marlowe didn't expect. No, not all of it. There's a whistleblower provision in financial fraud cases. The person who provides evidence that leads to recovery can receive up to 30% of the recovered funds. If the vault contains 330 million, and you provide the evidence that leads to Vex's conviction and asset recovery, you could be entitled to $99 million. Marlowe's breath caught. 99 million, enough to disappear, to give Poet every opportunity, to never be afraid again. But, Quinlan continued, that only happens if we do this legally, if we follow procedure, if we don't just take the money and run. Why not? Poet asked. Why not just take it? Vex stole it first. We'd be stealing from a thief. Because then you become him, Garrett said quietly. You become someone who thinks the rules don't apply, someone who justifies theft because you need the money, and that never ends well. Marlowe looked at her daughter, saw the question in her eyes, saw the crossroads laid out clearly. She thought about the files she'd read, Patricia Enfield, dead because she demanded her money back, and dozens of others like her. People who'd worked hard their whole lives only to have it stolen by someone who thought he was smarter than everyone else. She thought about Grant, about 12 years of telling herself she couldn't fight back because he was too powerful, too connected, too dangerous. And she thought about Sable Castellane, a 17-year-old girl who'd helped her parents build a case against a billionaire because it was the right thing to do. Okay, Marlowe said, I'll show you the vault. But we do this my way. We document everything. We make copies of copies. And we protect my daughter. That's non-negotiable. Quinlan nodded. Agreed. And one more thing, Marlowe added. We find out what happened to the Castellane family. If they're alive, they deserve to know their evidence still exists. If they're dead, someone needs to pay for that too. Quinlan extended his hand. Deal. Marlowe shook it, feeling the weight of the decision, feeling terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. She led them to the bedroom, to the closet, to the hidden panel, down the stairs into the vault. When Quinlan and Garrett saw it, they stopped, just stopped and stared. My God, Quinlan whispered. It's all here. They spent the next 6 hours documenting everything. Garrett photographed every file, every USB drive, every stack of currency. Quinlan copied the computer files to multiple encrypted drives. Marlowe walked them through what she'd already discovered. The videos of Vex, the financial records, the evidence of threats and intimidation. But it was Poet who found the most important file. She was exploring a subfolder labeled Family Archive when she came across a video file dated just 3 months ago. 3 months, not 7 years. Recent. She clicked it. The screen showed a woman, mid-40s, tired eyes but strong. Behind her was a nondescript room. Could be anywhere. The woman spoke. My name is Eleanor Castellane. If you're watching this, it means someone found our vault. I update this video every few months, just in case. We're alive. All of us. We're in witness protection. Or we were. The program placed us 7 years ago after we received credible death threats from Dorian Vex's associates. But the deal was we had to give up the evidence. We refused. We couldn't let him get away with what he did, so we hid it, and we hid ourselves. Eleanor paused, looked off camera, then continued. The FBI gave up on the case 2 years ago, said without evidence they couldn't prosecute. Vex's lawyers were too good. But we know the truth. And now you do too. If you're watching this, please finish what we started. We can't come back. We've built new lives. My children deserve to live without fear. But the people Vex hurt deserve justice. The evidence is all there, everything you need. You just have to be brave enough to use it. The video ended. The room was silent. They're alive, Poet whispered. The whole family is alive. Quinlan was already on his phone, texting someone, making calls, moving pieces on a chessboard Marlowe couldn't see. Garrett looked at Marlowe. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we make contact with the FBI, there's no going back. Vex will know someone found the evidence. He'll come looking. Marlowe thought about the question, thought about the easy path. Take the money, disappear, let someone else fight this fight. But she'd spent 12 years taking the easy path, staying quiet, staying small, letting powerful men do what they wanted because fighting back seemed impossible. And look where it had gotten her, running in the middle of the night with her daughter and 2 duffel bags. I'm sure, she said. Quinlan hung up his phone. Okay, I've got a contact. Special agent I worked with 15 years ago. Clean, incorruptible. He's based in Seattle. He can be here in 6 hours. 6 hours, Marlowe repeated. That's a long time. Garrett nodded. We should prepare. Assume Vex has people watching. Assume they'll know something's happening. How would they know? Poet asked. Because this house has been dark for 7 years, Garrett explained. And now suddenly there are cars in the driveway. Lights on. Activity. If Vex has been monitoring this location, and I guarantee he has, he knows something's changed. Marlowe felt her stomach drop. So we're sitting here waiting for either the FBI or Vex's people. Whoever gets here first. Essentially, Quinlan said, which is why we need a plan. They spent the next hour preparing. Garrett had military training, it turned out. He walked the property, identifying entry points, vulnerabilities, defensive positions. Quinlan made more calls, coordinating with his FBI contact, arranging secure transportation. And Marlowe, she did what she did best. She thought through scenarios, backup plans, escape routes. Around 4 in the afternoon, Poet was in the vault copying the last of the files when Marlowe heard it. A sound that made her blood freeze. An engine. No, multiple engines. Coming up the driveway. She ran to the window. 3 black SUVs, identical, moving fast. They're here, she called out. Quinlan appeared beside her. That's not the FBI. They're not due for another 2 hours. Then who is it? Garrett had his phone out, zooming in with the camera. The vehicles stopped at the end of the driveway. Doors opened. Men got out. 6 of them. Suits, sunglasses. The kind of corporate security that costs serious money. It's Vex's people, Garrett said quietly. We need to move. Now. Poet emerged from the vault, USB drives in her hands. I got everything. All the files copied. Good! Marlowe grabbed her daughter. We're leaving. But Quinlan stopped them. Wait, if we run now, they'll chase us. And they know these roads better than we do. We need to hold position until the FBI arrives. You want us to fight them? Marlowe asked. There are 6 of them, and 4 of us, and 2 of us aren't fighters. We don't fight, Garrett said. We fortify. This house is built like a fortress. Concrete, steel. We lock it down, make them work for entry, buy time. And if they get in, then we fall back to the vault, Quinlan said. It's the most defensible position. 1 entrance, steel door. We can hold it. Marlowe looked at Poet, saw fear in her daughter's eyes, but also something else. Trust. Poet trusted her to make the right call. Okay, Marlowe said, we hold. They moved quickly. Garrett and Quinlan secured the doors and ground floor windows. Marlowe and Poet went back to the vault, gathering the evidence, preparing to destroy it if necessary, rather than let Vex's people take it. Outside, the men were approaching the house. Marlowe watched from an upper window. They moved professionally, spreading out, covering angles, not rushing. They knew what they were doing. The lead man, tall, dark-haired, stopped about 30 yards from the house and pulled out a megaphone. "This is private property," his voice boomed. "You're trespassing. Come out now and we can resolve this peacefully." Quinlan appeared in the window next to Marlowe. "That's Marcus Troy, head of security for Vertex Capital, ex-military, Vex's personal problem solver." Marlowe's hands were shaking. "What do we do?" "We wait," Quinlan said. "Let them make the first move." They didn't have to wait long. One of the men produced what looked like a small battering ram. They approached the front door, and that's when Marlowe realized something. They'd locked the door from the inside, but the lock was old, the same lock she'd picked the night before. It wouldn't hold. The first hit shook the frame. The second hit cracked the wood. The third hit sent the door flying inward. Vex's men poured into the house, and the real fight began. Garrett moved first. He'd positioned himself at the top of the main staircase with a clear view of the foyer below. Marlowe watched from the hallway as Vex's men entered the house, their boots echoing on the polished concrete. "Stay down," Garrett whispered. "Let them spread out." The men moved through the ground floor methodically, searching, not destroying. They were looking for something specific, for someone specific. Marcus Troy's voice carried up the stairs. "We know you're here. We saw the car. We know someone accessed the vault. Just come out. We can talk about this like reasonable people." Quinlan was positioned in the master bedroom, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in urgent whispers to his FBI contact. Marlowe could hear fragments. "Hurry, armed intruders. Need backup now." Poet was beside Marlowe, pressed against the wall, clutching the USB drives like they were the most precious things in the world, which Marlowe realized they were. Those drives contained everything: the evidence, the truth, the power to bring down Dorian Vex. One of the men started up the stairs, young, maybe 25, moving carefully, weapon drawn. Marlowe recognized the gun. Glock 17, standard security issue. She'd seen Grant carry one just like it. Garrett waited until the man reached the top step. Then he stepped out. The man spun, raising his weapon. "Federal agent," Garrett said calmly, showing a badge Marlowe hadn't known he was carrying. "Lower your weapon. You're interfering with an active investigation." The man hesitated, looked back down the stairs. Marlowe saw the calculation in his eyes, the doubt. Then Marcus Troy appeared at the bottom of the stairs. His voice was steel. "He's not a federal agent. He's a private investigator working for disgruntled investors. Shoot him if he doesn't move." Garrett didn't move. The young man's gun wavered. "I don't want trouble. I'm just doing my job." "Your job is corporate security," Garrett said. "Not home invasion, not assault. You put that trigger and you're looking at 25 to life. Is Dorian Vex worth that?" Marlowe saw the moment the doubt took hold. The man lowered his weapon slightly. Marcus Troy cursed. "Get up here, all of you, now!" Footsteps thundered on the stairs. 4 more men, all armed, all converging on Garrett's position. "Fall back!" Quinlan's voice came from the bedroom. "Garrett, fall back now!" Garrett moved, fast, ducking into the nearest room as gunfire erupted. Not to kill. Warning shots, into the ceiling, into the walls, meant to scare, to intimidate. Marlowe grabbed Poet and pulled her toward the hidden panel in the bedroom closet. The vault. It was their only option. They ran. Behind them, she heard Garrett and Quinlan returning fire. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Poet was crying. Marlowe was too focused to cry. Her mind was calculating, processing. They needed 3 minutes to get to the vault, seal the door, hold position until the FBI arrived. They made it to the closet, through the panel, down the stairs. Poet was shaking so hard she could barely walk. Marlowe held her daughter's hand, pulling her forward. Behind them, footsteps on the stairs. Pursuing. They reached the vault door. It was still open from their earlier work. Marlowe shoved Poet inside and turned to face the stairs. Garrett appeared first, backing down, weapon raised. covering their retreat. Then Quinlan, breathing hard, blood on his shoulder. "You're hit," Marlowe said. Quinlan shook his head. "Just grazed. I'm fine. Get inside." They piled into the vault. Garrett slammed the steel door, through the manual locks. The hydraulic seals engaged with a hiss. They were sealed in. Safe. For now. Poet had collapsed into a chair, still clutching the USB drives. Marlowe went to her, wrapped her arms around her daughter. "It's okay. We're okay." But they weren't okay. Marlowe knew it. They were trapped. The vault had one entrance, one exit, and Vex's men were on the other side. Quinlan was on his phone again. "Yeah, we're in the vault." "No, we can't hold indefinitely. How long until you get here?" He listened. His face darkened. 45 minutes, he said. "They're 45 minutes out." Garrett was examining the door. "It's solid. They'll need serious equipment to breach it. Shaped charges, hydraulic jacks. They probably didn't come prepared for that." "So we wait," Marlowe said. "So we wait." But waiting meant sitting, thinking. And Marlowe's mind was racing. Something wasn't right. Vex's men had shown up too fast, too prepared, like they'd known exactly where to look. "Quinlan," she said slowly, "how did they find us?" He looked up. "What do you mean? This house has been hidden for 7 years. You said it yourself. You've been searching for months. How did Vex's security team just happen to show up the same day we did?" Quinlan and Garrett exchanged a look. "Your car," Garrett said. "The Honda. It's registered to a shell company, but those can be traced. If Vex has been monitoring for activity around known Castellane properties—" "No," Marlowe interrupted. "That would take days, maybe weeks. They were here within hours of us arriving." Poet lifted her head. "Mom, your phone." Marlowe's blood went cold. The burner phone. She'd turned it off. But before that, she'd used it twice. Once to call the garage where she'd planned to have the Honda serviced. Once to check if there was a signal when they first arrived. 2 pings. 2 location markers. Enough for someone looking. But who would be looking? She'd bought the phone cash. Used a fake name. There was no way Grant could have, unless he'd already tracked her. Unless he'd known she was planning to run. Unless he'd planted something. She pulled out her duffel bag, started going through it. Clothes, documents, cash. And there, sewn into the lining, a small device, no bigger than a quarter, a tracker. "Grant," she whispered. "He was tracking me the whole time." Quinlan took the device, examined it. "This is professional grade, real-time GPS. He's known your location every moment since you left." Marlowe felt sick. All of it. The careful planning, the burner phone, the cash-bought car. Worthless. Grant had been one step ahead the entire time. And if Grant knew where they were, then— Poet grabbed her mother's arm. "Mom, why would Dad's tracker lead Vex's people here, unless Grant was working with them?" The pieces fell into place. Grant's investment firm, his connections, the irregularities Marlowe had noticed in the books 12 years ago. What if Grant wasn't just embezzling? What if he was connected to Vex, to Vertex Capital? Marlowe's hands were shaking. She'd been running from Grant, but she'd been running toward Vex's people the whole time, led here like an animal into a trap. Quinlan was already on his laptop, pulling up records. Grant Ashby. Ashby Investments. "Let me see." He typed rapidly, then stopped. "Son of a bitch," he breathed. Grant Ashby and Dorian Vex were college roommates, Yale, class of 1998. They've been connected for over 25 years. Marlowe felt the world tilt. 25 years. She'd been married to Grant for 12 of those years, working for his firm, handling his accounts, and the whole time— "Did you know?" Poet asked quietly. "Did you know Dad was connected to this?" "No," Marlowe said, "but she should have seen it. Should have questioned why Grant had been so interested in her financial analysis skills. Why he'd hired her straight out of college. Why he'd pushed her to look the other way on certain transactions. She'd been a tool, an unwitting accomplice, and when she'd started asking too many questions, he'd married her, kept her close, controlled her. Garrett's radio crackled. One of the Vex security team trying to make contact. "We know you're in there," Marcus Troy's voice, calm and professional. "We know you have evidence belonging to Mr. Vex. Evidence that was stolen from Vertex Capital by the Castellane family. We're authorized to negotiate for its return." Quinlan picked up the radio. "The evidence wasn't stolen. It was legally obtained during a criminal investigation. And we're not negotiating." A pause. Then Troy again. "Let me speak with Marlo Ashby." Marlo froze. They knew she was here, knew her name. Grant had told them. Quinlan handed her the radio. "Your call." Marlo took it, her hand steady despite the fear coursing through her. "This is Marlo. Mrs. Ashby." Troy's voice softened. "Your husband is very concerned about you. He called us when he realized you'd disappeared with his daughter. He's worried you're having some kind of episode." Poet's eyes went wide. "He's lying. Tell him he's lying." Marlo pressed the button. "My husband is an abuser and apparently a criminal associate of Dorian Vex. I'm not having an episode. I'm protecting my daughter and evidence of massive financial fraud." Troy sighed. "Mrs. Ashby, you're in over your head. You don't understand what you've found. Those files. That money. It's all part of an ongoing legal dispute. Confidential business records. If you've accessed them, you've committed multiple felonies." Marlo felt a flash of anger, the kind that burned away fear. "I've read the files. I've seen the videos. I know what Dorian Vex did. I know about the 5,000 investors he stole from. I know about Patricia Enfield and how she died 6 months after demanding her money back. And I know you're here to destroy evidence, to protect a criminal." Silence on the other end. Then a different voice. Not Troy. Older, cultured, powerful. "Miss Ashby, this is Dorian Vex." Marlo's grip tightened on the radio. "You're a smart woman," Vex continued. "Smart enough to know that you're in a no-win situation. My security team will get into that vault eventually. When they do, you'll have nothing to bargain with. But right now, in this moment, you have leverage. So let's talk about what you want." Marlo looked at Quinlan. He nodded. "Keep him talking. Buy time." "What I want," Marlo said slowly, "is for you to go to prison for what you've done." Vex laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Prison. How delightfully naive. "Miss Ashby, I have 17 lawyers on retainer. I've donated millions to political campaigns. I have friends in the Justice Department, the SEC, the FBI. Do you really think some dusty files and grainy videos are going to touch me?" "Yes," Marlo said, "because the evidence is solid. Because the Castellane family did their homework. And because this time, you can't make it disappear." Another pause. When Vex spoke again, his voice had hardened. "Then let me be clear. If you give that evidence to the authorities, I will destroy you, your daughter, everyone you've ever cared about. I have resources you can't imagine. I will bury you so deep no one will ever find you." Poet was crying again. Marlo pulled her close. Quinlan took the radio back. "Vex, this is Quinlan Rowe, former FBI. I know your playbook. Threats, intimidation, making people disappear. But times have changed. We've already sent copies of the evidence to multiple secure locations. Killing us won't stop what's coming." Vex's laughter was bitter. "Copies? Of course. Well played, Mr. Rowe. Then I suppose we're at an impasse." "Not quite," a new voice said. Marlo's heart stopped. She knew that voice, knew it better than any other. Grant. "Hello, Marlo," her husband said through the radio. His voice carried that familiar mix of charm and menace. "I have to say, you've surprised me. I didn't think you had this kind of fight in you." Marlo grabbed the radio from Quinlan. "You've been working with Vex this whole time. Everything. Our marriage. It was all about controlling me." "Not everything," Grant said. "I did love you once. before you got all moral and complicated. But yes, when Dorian called and said he needed someone to keep an eye on a talented financial analyst who was getting too curious, I stepped up. Marrying you was just good business. Poet made a sound, something between a sob and a scream. And Poet? Marlowe asked. Was she good business too? Grant's voice softened. Poet is my daughter. I love her. Which is why I'm giving you this chance. Come out, give us the evidence, and I promise I'll make sure you and Poet are taken care of. Comfortable lives. Anywhere you want to go, just walk away. Marlowe looked at her daughter, at the tears streaming down her face, at the betrayal written in every line of her young features. She thought about 12 years of lies, of fear, of staying quiet because it seemed easier, safer. She thought about the families who'd lost everything to Vex's scheme, about Patricia Enfield, about the Castellanes living in hiding. She thought about the woman she wanted Poet to see when she looked at her mother, and she made her choice. No, Marlowe said into the radio, her voice clear, strong. We're not coming out. We're not giving you anything. And when the FBI gets here, every single person outside this door is going to prison, including you, Grant. The radio went silent. Then the lights went out. Vex's men had cut the power. The vault was pitch black except for the faint glow of the computer monitors running on backup battery. They're coming, Garrett said. He was at the door, ear pressed against the steel. I can hear them setting charges. How long? Quinlan asked. Minutes, maybe less. And the FBI? Still 30 minutes out. Marlowe pulled Poet close. In the darkness, holding her daughter, she whispered, No matter what happens, I love you. And I'm sorry for all of it, for staying so long, for not protecting you better. Poet hugged her back, fiercely, tightly. Mom, you're protecting me now. That's what matters. Outside the vault, Marlowe heard machinery, hydraulics, the grinding of metal on metal. They were breaching the door, and when they got through, there would be nowhere left to run. But Marlowe wasn't running anymore. She was standing, fighting, and whatever came next, she'd face it head on, because sometimes the only way out is through. And sometimes the quietest voices, when they finally speak, shake the whole world. The grinding stopped. In the sudden silence, Marlowe could hear her own heartbeat, could hear Poet's rapid breathing, could hear Quinlan checking his weapon and Garrett moving into position. Then the explosion. Not massive, controlled, shaped charges designed to blow the locks without destroying what was inside. The vault door shuddered, metal screamed, but it held. They're going to need another round, Garrett said. That door is thicker than they thought. Marlowe's mind was racing. Another round meant another 5 minutes, maybe 10, but the FBI was still 25 minutes away. The math didn't work. They couldn't hold long enough, unless they changed the equation. She turned to Quinlan. The evidence. You said you already sent copies to secure locations. He nodded. Encrypted servers. 3 different locations. Even if they destroy everything here, the information survives. So what's in this vault is redundant, Marlowe said. Quinlan's eyes narrowed. What are you thinking? We can't defend what we have, Marlowe said, but we can use it. Leverage. Poet looked up. Mom, what are you saying? Marlowe grabbed the radio. Vex. Grant. I know you can hear me. A pause. Then Grant's voice. I'm listening. You want the evidence, Marlowe said. The physical evidence, the cryptocurrency codes, the offshore account information, the location of the gold. All of it. Marlowe, Quinlan warned. She held up her hand. I'll give it to you, all of it, in exchange for 3 things. Vex's voice came through. I'm intrigued. Continue. 1, Marlowe said. My daughter walks out of here, unharmed. You let her go and you never come near her again. 2, you let Quinlan and Garrett leave. They're just investigators. They were hired to find assets. They don't care about you. 3, I get 30 minutes. 30 minutes before you breach this door. That's all I need. Silence. She could imagine Vex and Grant conferring, calculating, wondering what she was planning. Finally, Vex spoke. "And what do you get out of this deal, besides your daughter's safety?" "Nothing," Marlowe said. "I stay here. You can do whatever you want with me. I just need to know Poet is safe." "Mom, no." Poet grabbed her arm. "I'm not leaving you." Marlowe turned to her daughter, pulled her close, whispered in her ear, "Trust me, please. Just this once, trust me." Poet was shaking, crying, but she nodded. Vex's voice crackled. "You have 15 minutes. Send the girl out first. Then we talk about the rest." 30, Marlowe countered, "or I start destroying hard drives right now." Another pause. 20 minutes. That's my final offer." "Done," Marlowe said. She turned to Garrett. "Open the door. Let Poet out." Garrett looked at Quinlan. Quinlan looked at Marlowe. Some silent communication passed between them. "You have a plan," Quinlan said. It wasn't a question. Marlowe smiled, a tight, fierce smile. "I've got 20 minutes to come up with one." Garrett moved to the door, started working the manual locks. The hydraulic seals hissed as they released. Slowly, the heavy steel door swung open. Beyond it, Marlowe could see the stairwell, and at the top, silhouetted against emergency lighting, 6 figures, armed, waiting. Poet hesitated at the threshold. "Go," Marlowe said softly. "Walk straight up those stairs. Don't look back. Don't say anything. Just get out of this house and keep walking until you find the FBI. What if they don't let me go?" "They will," Marlowe said with more confidence than she felt. "Because Vex is a businessman. He knows you're worthless as a hostage if I'm willing to trade everything for your freedom. You're only valuable to me, and once you're safe I have nothing left to lose." Poet hugged her mother, so tight Marlowe could barely breathe. "I love you," Poet whispered. "I love you too, baby. Now go." Poet walked up the stairs, slowly, each step echoing. Marlowe watched her daughter's silhouette merge with the armed men at the top, saw them part to let her through, saw her disappear. And then Garrett slammed the door shut again, sealed them back in. "Okay," Quinlan said. "Now what?" "Now," Marlowe said, pulling out her phone. "We call the real reinforcements." She dialed a number she'd programmed hours ago, one she'd found in the Castellane files. A direct line that had been disconnected for 7 years, but that she'd traced through reverse directories and social media until she found what she needed. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times, then a woman's voice. Cautious. "Hello?" "Eleanor Castellane," Marlowe said. "My name is Marlowe Ashby. I'm in your vault. I found your evidence, and I need your help." Silence. Then, "How do I know this isn't a trap?" "Because Dorian Vex's security team is outside the vault door right now trying to destroy everything you built, and the FBI is 20 minutes away, and I just traded my daughter's safety for time I don't have. So if this is a trap, it's a really elaborate one." Eleanor's voice changed, hardened. "What do you need?" Marlowe looked at the computers, at the files, at the cryptocurrency access codes displayed on the screens. "I need you to tell me how to weaponize $330 million in 18 minutes. On the other end of the line, Marlowe heard Eleanor laugh. Not a happy laugh, a warrior's laugh. "Okay," Eleanor said, "listen carefully." For the next 15 minutes, Eleanor Castellane walked Marlowe through her family's contingency plan. The plan they'd built for this exact scenario, the plan they'd hoped they'd never need to use. It was brilliant, ruthless, and completely illegal. The cryptocurrency wasn't just sitting in wallets, it was programmed, smart contracts, triggers. If certain conditions were met, the funds would automatically distribute to specific accounts belonging to the defrauded investors. But if different conditions were met, something else would happen. Every penny would be donated to the SEC whistleblower program with an attached file containing every piece of evidence against Vex. Irrevocable, public, permanent. The gold stored off-site had similar programming, biometric locks tied to Castellane family members, but also emergency protocols. If the locks detected forced entry, They triggered silent alarms to federal authorities and news organizations simultaneously. The physical evidence in the vault was backed up in ways Marlowe hadn't even seen. Embedded metadata in image files. Stenographic data hidden in family photos posted to social media years ago. Blockchain records that couldn't be deleted. David thought of everything, Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. He knew they might come for us, knew they might destroy the vault, so he made sure the truth was indestructible. Marlowe was typing rapidly, following Eleanor's instructions, accessing systems, entering codes. "There's one more thing," Eleanor said. "The house itself. What about it? It's not just a house. It's a dead man's switch, the solar panels, the backup batteries. They're not just powering the vault, they're powering a broadcast system. If the main power gets cut, if the vault gets breached, the system automatically uploads every file to a network of servers and sends alerts to 217 journalists, federal agents, and financial regulators." Marlowe stopped typing. "You're telling me this house is booby-trapped to expose Vex if anyone tries to raid it?" "Essentially, yes. The broadcast started the moment they cut the power. You've got about 10 minutes before every major news organization in the country receives an anonymous package containing everything Vex has done." Garrett was listening, monitoring the door. "They're setting more charges. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they breach." "Eleanor," Marlowe said, "thank you for building this, for not giving up." "Find my daughter," Eleanor said. "Sable. Tell her we're proud of her. Tell her she was right to hide the evidence, and tell her we love her." The line went dead. Marlowe looked at Quinlan and Garrett. The house is about to make us all very famous. Or very dead. Possibly both. "What do you need us to do?" Quinlan asked. "Destroy the physical hard drives," Marlowe said. "Smash everything. I want it to look like we panicked, like we tried to cover our tracks." "But the data is already backed up," Garrett said. "Exactly. Marlowe was already swinging a hammer at the nearest server, but Vex doesn't know that. He thinks if he destroys this vault, he destroys the evidence. I want him to think he won, right up until he didn't. They worked fast, smashing, breaking, creating chaos. Marlowe grabbed the currency and diamonds, stuffed them into a duffel bag, grabbed the USB drives Poet had been holding, shoved them in her pockets. Outside, she heard machinery again. The final breach attempt. "The door's going to fail," Garrett said. "Next explosion will do it." Marlowe positioned herself behind the desk. Quinlan and Garrett flanked the door, weapons ready. "When they come through," Marlowe said, "we surrender, immediately. No heroics. We let them take everything. Let them think they won." "And then?" Quinlan asked. "And then we wait for the story to break." Marlowe checked her phone. 7 minutes until the broadcast completes. 7 minutes until every journalist in America gets the biggest financial fraud story of the decade. The explosion came, bigger this time. The vault door blew inward with a screech of tortured metal. Smoke poured in, and through it, Vex's security team, weapons raised, flashlights cutting through the haze. "On the ground," Marcus Troy shouted. "Hands where I can see them." Marlowe raised her hands, saw Quinlan and Garrett do the same. Troy and his team swept the vault, secured the room, zip-tied Marlowe's hands behind her back. Rough, professional, not cruel but not gentle. Then Grant walked in. And behind him, Dorian Vex himself. Marlowe had seen Vex in photos, in videos, but in person he was different. Smaller, older, the kind of man who looked ordinary until you saw his eyes. Cold, calculating, empty of anything resembling empathy. "Miss Ashby," Vex said, "you've caused me considerable trouble." Marlowe said nothing, just stared at him. Vex walked to the destroyed servers, to the smashed hard drives. His expression didn't change. "Thorough," he said. "I'm almost impressed, but ultimately futile." He turned to Grant. "Get whatever's left. Documents, USB drives, anything that might have survived." Grant moved through the vault, collecting, Cataloguing. He found the duffel bag with the currency and diamonds, smiled. "Most of it's here," he said. "The cryptocurrency codes were on the servers, probably lost. But we can work with this." Vex nodded. "Good. Troy, clean this up. Make it look like a gas leak. Old house, faulty wiring, tragic accident. Bodies burned beyond recognition." Marlowe's blood went cold. "You're going to kill us." Vex looked at her like she was a child who'd asked an obvious question. "Of course. Did you think this ended any other way? You found evidence of crimes that could destroy me. You involved federal investigators. You backed me into a corner. People who do that don't get to walk away." Grant shifted uncomfortably. "Dorian, she's still my wife. And the mother of my daughter." "Whom you sent away," Vex said coldly. "Very noble, Grant, but ultimately short-sighted. The girl knows too much now. She'll have to be dealt with as well." Grant's face went pale. "We had a deal. Poet goes free." "Deals change," Vex said. "Surely you've learned that by now." Marlowe saw something flicker in Grant's expression. Doubt, maybe even regret. 12 years of marriage, and she'd never seen him doubt anything. Troy was setting up equipment, plastic sheeting, accelerant, making it look natural while ensuring nothing would survive to contradict the narrative. Marlowe checked her phone subtly. 3 minutes until broadcast. She needed to keep them talking, keep them here, keep Vex in this vault when the story broke. "You won't get away with this," she said. "People know we're here. The FBI is coming." Vex smiled. "The FBI is being redirected as we speak. A credible threat at a federal building in Seattle. Completely fabricated, of course, but it will buy us the time we need. By the time anyone arrives here, all they'll find is a tragic accident. And Vex Technologies will make a generous donation to the investigation." Case closed. Quinlan spoke for the first time. "You really think you've thought of everything?" Vex turned to him. "Mr. Rowe, former FBI, I know all about you, about your vendetta against me, about the investors who hired you, desperate people clinging to desperate hope. When you disappear, they'll lose what little faith they had left. They'll give up, move on, and I'll continue exactly as I have been. 2 minutes." Garrett was watching Marlowe. She saw understanding in his eyes. He'd noticed her checking her phone. He knew something was coming. "The thing about desperate people," Garrett said slowly, "is they're unpredictable. You can't control what you can't predict." Vex laughed. "Philosophy from a bodyguard. How charming, but ultimately irrelevant." He turned to Troy. "Finish this. I have a dinner meeting at 8. Troy nodded. Started unsealing the accelerant containers. 1 minute. Marlowe's heart was pounding. 60 seconds. She just needed 60 more seconds. Grant was staring at the duffel bag, at the money, at the life he'd built on lies and theft. Marlowe saw something break in him, something fundamental. "She's 15 years old," Grant said quietly. Vex didn't look at him. "Excuse me?" "Poet. She's 15. She's a child. Whatever Marlowe did, whatever I did, Poet is innocent." Vex's patience was thinning. "We've been over this." "No," Grant said, his voice stronger now. "You've been over it. I didn't agree to hurt my daughter." "Then you're weak," Vex said, "which is why you'll never be more than middle management." 30 seconds. Grant looked at Marlowe. Really looked at her, for the first time in years, and she saw something in his eyes that might have been an apology. He moved fast, grabbed the accelerant container from Troy, swung it. Liquid splashed across the vault, across Vex, across the evidence. "What the hell are you doing?" Vex shouted. Troy reached for his weapon. Grant threw the empty container at him. It hit him square in the chest, and Marlowe's phone buzzed. Broadcast complete. The vault lights flickered. Then the screens mounted on the walls lit up. Emergency broadcast system, preset by the Castellanes, showing every television in the house, every computer, every device. News alerts scrolling across screens. Breaking. Massive financial fraud exposed. Vertex Capital CEO Dorian Vex accused of billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. Evidence released by anonymous source. Vex froze, staring at the screens. Another alert. SEC announces emergency investigation into Vertex Capital. Trading halted, assets frozen, and another. Federal prosecutors seek warrant for Dorian Vex arrest. 5,000 victims, 18 years of fraud. The screens showed footage, the videos from the vault. Vex threatening investors, admitting to fraud, ordering cover-ups. Troy's radio crackled. All units, FBI has arrived on site. I repeat, FBI on site. Multiple vehicles, they're surrounding the house. Vex's face went from confusion to rage to something like fear. What did you do? He turned on Marlowe. She smiled. I finished what the Castellane started. Outside, loudspeakers, FBI, everyone in the house. Come out with your hands up. The building is surrounded. Troy looked at Vex. We need to leave. Now. But Garrett was blocking the door, and Quinlan, despite his zip-tied hands, had positioned himself in front of the stairs. It's over, Quinlan said. You're done. Vex pulled a gun from his jacket. Marlowe's breath caught. She'd miscalculated, thought he was just a white-collar criminal, hadn't considered he might be desperate enough to kill personally. Move, Vex said to Garrett, or I'll shoot her. The gun was pointed at Marlowe's head. Garrett didn't move. You shoot her, you guarantee a death sentence. Surrender now, maybe you can negotiate. Maybe you get 20 years instead of life. Vex's hand was shaking, not from fear, from rage, pure incandescent rage. I will not go to prison, he said. Marlowe saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the calculation in his eyes, saw him decide that if he was going down, he was taking everyone with him. Grant saw it too. He lunged, grabbed Vex's arm. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Marlowe felt the bullet pass inches from her head, felt the shockwave, felt the spray of concrete as it hit the wall behind her. Grant and Vex struggled, two men fighting over a gun, over money, over freedom. Troy moved to intervene. Garrett hit him. Hard. Military training against corporate security. Not a fair fight. Quinlan was working his zip ties, using a piece of broken metal from the destroyed servers, sawing frantically. And Marlowe, hands still bound, did the only thing she could. She kicked hard, caught Vex in the knee. He went down. The gun clattered across the floor. Grant dove for it. So did Troy. They collided. The gun skittered under the desk. Upstairs, footsteps. Heavy, multiple. The FBI breaching the house. Vex was trying to stand. Marlowe kicked him again. All the rage, all the fear, all the 12 years of being controlled and silenced and hurt. She put it all into that kick. He stayed down. FBI. Voices from upstairs. Anyone in the basement. Identify yourselves. Down here, Quinlan shouted. We have suspects in custody and evidence, a lot of evidence. Agents poured down the stairs. Tactical gear, weapons drawn, professional, competent. Marlowe had never been so happy to see law enforcement in her life. The next 6 hours were chaos. Interviews, statements, medical checks. Marlowe's hands were freed. She was wrapped in a blanket, given water, treated like a victim instead of a suspect. She asked about Poet. They told her she was safe, picked up by agents a mile from the house, already being interviewed, probably traumatized but physically unharmed. Grant was arrested, so was Vex, so was Troy and his entire team, all of them facing dozens of federal charges: conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, kidnapping. Quinlan was treated for his gunshot wound. Garrett was being debriefed by his former FBI contacts, explaining how they'd connected Marlowe to the Castellane evidence, how they'd documented everything. And in newsrooms across the country, journalists were going through the data dump. 347 videos, thousands of documents, financial records, emails, a complete, comprehensive record of 18 years of fraud. By midnight, Dorian Vex was the top story on every news channel, his face on every screen, his crimes laid bare for the world to see. By morning, the SEC had frozen all Vertex Capital assets. Nearly $800 million recovered. Not enough to cover what he'd stolen, but a start. By the end of the week, 17 more executives from Vertex were arrested. The Ponzi scheme went deeper than anyone had imagined. And through it all, Marlowe sat with Poet in a hotel room provided by the FBI Witness Protection Program. Temporary, until things settled. Until they figured out what came next. Poet was quiet, processing, trying to understand how her father could be both the man who'd raised her and the man who'd been willing to let her die. "He saved us at the end," Poet said. "Doesn't that count for something?" Marlowe wrapped her arm around her daughter. "It counts. It doesn't erase what he did, but it counts." 3 weeks later, Marlowe was sitting in a lawyer's office, high-rise building, view of the Seattle skyline, the kind of place she never thought she'd be. Across from her sat the lead federal prosecutor, a sharp woman named Diana Torres, who'd made her career taking down white-collar criminals. "The whistleblower reward," Torres said, "has been calculated, 30% of recovered assets. As of this morning, that amounts to $240 million. Marlowe blinked. The math didn't compute. "We were told $330 million in the vault." "Yes," Torres said, "but the investigation recovered an additional $560 million from offshore accounts. Hidden assets. Things even you didn't find. Your evidence led us to all of it. So the total recovery is $800 million. Your share is substantial." Marlowe couldn't breathe. $240 million. More money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. "What happens to the rest?" she asked. "Distributed to the victims, the 5,000 investors. They won't get everything back, but they'll get something. For many of them, it will be the difference between bankruptcy and survival." Marlowe nodded. "And Vex?" "Life sentence. No parole." Torres smiled. "Your evidence was airtight. His lawyers couldn't find a single hole. He pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. He'll die in prison." "And Grant?" Torres's expression softened. "Complicated. He cooperated, testified against Vex, explained the full scope of the conspiracy. Because of that, we offered a deal. 15 years, possibility of parole after 10. Poet would be 25 when he got out, maybe 28. Old enough to decide for herself if she wanted a relationship with him. "The Castellane family wants to meet you," Torres said. "They're coming out of witness protection. With Vex in prison and his organization dismantled, they're safe now. They want to thank you for finishing what they started." Marlowe met them in a coffee shop. Low-key, anonymous, just 2 families who'd survived. Eleanor Castellane hugged Marlowe like they were old friends. David shook her hand with tears in his eyes. The twin boys, now 17, were polite and shy. And Sable was 24 now, a college graduate, working in cybersecurity. She'd spent 7 years in hiding, but she hadn't wasted them. She'd built a life. "You read my journal?" Sable said. Marlowe nodded. "It saved my life, gave me the courage to fight." "You finished what we couldn't," Sable said. "You exposed him. You made sure the truth survived." They talked for hours, about fear, about courage, about what it meant to stand up to powerful people, about the cost of doing the right thing and the cost of not doing it. Before they left, Sable gave Marlowe a photo, the Castellane family, all of them, smiling, free. On the back, in the same handwriting from the journal, a note. "Some houses hold secrets. Some hold dreams. Yours held both. Thank you for choosing truth." 6 months later, Marlowe stood in front of a building. Not a mansion, not a vault. A modest 3-story structure in a quiet neighborhood. The sign above the door read, "Ashby House, Shelter and Resources for Domestic Violence Survivors." She'd used $20 million of her whistleblower reward to buy it, to staff it, to stock it with everything people needed to escape dangerous situations: legal help, financial counseling, therapy, job training, childcare, and most importantly, hope. Poet was beside her, home from her new private school for the day. She volunteered at the shelter twice a week, helping other kids who'd lived through what she'd lived through. Inside, a woman was checking in, nervous, bruised, carrying 2 duffel bags and a sleeping toddler. She'd driven through the night to get here, had nowhere else to go. Marlowe greeted her personally. "What's your name?" The woman hesitated, then whispered, "Patricia." Marlowe felt her throat tighten. The same name as Patricia Enfield, the woman who died demanding her money back from Vex. "You're safe here, Patricia," Marlowe said. "We're going to help you figure out your next steps. No pressure, no judgment, just support." The woman started crying. "Thank you. I didn't think anyone would help." Poet stepped forward, offered the woman a bottle of water, a warm smile. "We help," she said simply, "because someone helped us." Later that night, Marlowe and Poet sat on the porch of their new house, modest, safe, theirs. They could have bought a mansion, could have lived in luxury, but they'd chosen something different, chosen community, chosen purpose, chosen meaning over money. "Do you ever think about Dad?" Poet asked. "Sometimes," Marlowe admitted. "I think about who he could have been, if he'd made different choices." "Do you think people can change?" Marlowe thought about Grant's final moments in the vault, how he'd chosen to save them, how he'd turned on Vex when it mattered. "I think people can surprise you," she said. "I think everyone has the capacity for both good and evil. What matters is which one they choose when it counts." Poet was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mom?" "Yeah? I'm proud of you, for fighting, for not running, for showing me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." Marlowe pulled her daughter close. "I'm proud of you too, for being stronger than I ever was at 15, for believing in truth even when it was dangerous." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, thinking about everything that had brought them here. Marlowe's phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor Castellane. "Saw the news story about Ashby House. Beautiful work. The world needs more people like you." Marlowe texted back. "The world needs more people like your family, willing to risk everything for what's right." The response came quickly. "We all just need each other. None of us can do it alone." Marlowe looked at the shelter, at the lights in the windows, at the women and children inside finding safety, finding hope. She thought about the mansion on the hillside, about the vault beneath it, about the secrets that had changed her life. And she realized something. The real treasure hadn't been the money, hadn't been the evidence. It had been the choice. The moment when she decided to stop running and start fighting. Because that's what changed everything. Not the $330 million, not the exposure of Dorian Vex, not even the justice for 5,000 victims. It was the choice, the decision that she mattered, that her daughter mattered, that truth mattered more than safety. And in making that choice, she'd discovered something more valuable than any vault could hold. She'd discovered herself. Anyone can find treasure if they're willing to look beneath the surface, but only the brave find the courage to use it for something greater than themselves. As the years passed, Marlowe Ashby became known not as the woman who'd exposed a billionaire, not as the mechanic who'd stumbled into a fortune, but as the founder of a movement. Ashby House grew. 12 shelters across 6 states. Thousands of women and children helped, lives rebuilt, cycles broken. Poet graduated college with honors, went to law school, became an advocate for financial fraud victims and domestic violence survivors, carried her mother's mission forward into a new generation. Grant served his sentence, wrote letters to Poet that she sometimes read and sometimes didn't, tried to make amends for choices that could never be fully amended. The Castellane family came out of hiding completely, used their story to help other whistleblowers, to show that speaking truth to power was possible. Dangerous, yes, but possible. And Dorian Vex, he died in prison 8 years into his sentence. Alone, forgotten. A cautionary tale about what happens when you build an empire on lies. But the story that mattered wasn't his fall. It was Marlowe's rise, from a woman running in the rain with everything she owned in 2 duffel bags, to a woman standing tall, building shelters, changing laws, proving that one person with courage could shake the foundations of the world. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is give someone with nothing left to lose a reason to stand their ground. And sometimes the quietest voices, when they finally speak, echo forever. The mansion on the hillside was torn down, the vault sealed, the land donated to a conservation trust, a memorial park now, with a plaque, in memory of those who risk everything for truth. May we all find the courage to finish what they started. Marlowe visited it once, stood where the vault had been, where she'd made the choice that changed her life. Poet stood beside her, now a lawyer, fierce, unbreakable, everything Marlowe had hoped she would become. "Do you ever regret it?" Poet asked. "The danger, the fear, all of it." Marlowe thought about the question, about the storm that had led them here, about the broken-down car and the hidden room and the choice between running and fighting. "Not for a second," she said, because she'd learned something that night in the vault, something that no amount of money could teach and no amount of fear could erase. That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's fear transformed into purpose, terror alchemized into action, weakness reimagined as strength, and that sometimes the things we stumble into by accident are exactly what we needed to find all along. Not treasure, not fortune, not even justice, but ourselves, the end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to keep discovering. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe the truth deserves a voice.